Hello, Security Pros. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today on ESA's webinar, What's Really Up with CDMA and POTS, the inside scoop from experts who know. This webinar is designed to prepare us to work through coming events by revealing how the CDMA sunset will feel different from former sunsets, as well as how the FCC plays a big part in the ultimate discontinuation of POTS. There are significant industry impacting events on the horizon. Those events include the CDMA network sunset Verizon has scheduled for the end of this year, and something that has not had near as much as information shared in recent years, the decline and eventual discontinuation of POTS lines. I'm Daniela Chavez, ESA's Marketing and Communication Specialist, and I'm excited to lead this webinar today. Before we dive in, I'd like to provide some tips for those of you joining us on your first ESA webinar. Welcome. You will be muted during the duration of this session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. If a question or comment comes to mind at any point during today's session, click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and I'll ensure that we save some time for your questions with our experts today. We will also be recording this webinar so you can re-watch the on-demand session and share it with your colleagues. Tomorrow, you'll receive an email thanking you for your attendance today with a link to the recording. If your company is a member of ESA, we thank you and we hope you're utilizing your benefits to save, expand your team, and get connected to the ESA community. If you're not yet a member of the Electronic Security Association, check us out. ESA is the largest and longest standing association serving the pro-installed electronic security and life safety industry. Our members are integrators, dealers, monitoring centers, and even manufacturers and service providers in the space. You'd be surprised at the power an ESA membership holds for your company. Get a feel for all the ESA benefits, including savings on business insurance, training, customized in-house onboarding, and professional development programs, peer networking groups, government advocacy programs, certifications that satisfy state licensing, and in some cases are also alternatives to NICET at esaweb.org. One of our membership specialists would be happy to walk you through these benefits and the application process. We at ESA realize your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of that time with us today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Daniel Rosales and Brian Dotson. Daniel has a degree in computer engineering and currently pursuing his MBA. As a Senior Director of Technical Services, Daniel oversees technical support and product management for Telguard, which allows him to not only stay in tune with the current state of the industry, but also stay informed on the latest technological developments to improve it. With over 15 years in the industry, he has gained intimate knowledge in many segments of the industry, from security and life safety to residential and commercial. As a customer-focused leader who believes that a strong support system is necessary for customer success, Daniel has driven initiatives for Telguard to not only innovate products, but also the way we support our customers. Brian graduated from Kennesaw State University in 2007 with a BBA. Changing gears from holding management positions with various retailers, he joined Telguard in 2009. Brian started with the customer service team and took on more responsibilities in order to create a better environment. Telguard dealer experience. He has presented, solo and with other team members, Telguard information to alarm associations and sales training events over the years. So without further ado, guys, please take it away.
Daniela, thanks so much. Appreciate the opportunity that ESA has provided us here. In addition, I wanted to thank the audience for taking time out of their day to sit with us and get a little bit more educated on this upcoming sunset and even a future sunset. So today's presentation is basically going to be focusing on what is really up with CDMA and POTS. You know, with over 35 years of experience in the industry, we do consider ourselves the alarm experts. Daniel, let's slow down the deck a little bit. I don't know if it's on a timer. Can you maybe back it up if you can? Awesome. Okay, cool. We'll go from here. So Daniela expertly went into detail of Daniel and myself So, Daniel, I've had the pleasure of working with him and at Telguard for over 13 years now. So this is actually my first job in the industry. Never saw myself going down this route, but it was one of those things, signed up for it, and haven't really looked back. Telguard has provided such a great opportunity for career growth for myself and my family. So, it's a company that I definitely love working with and have loved working with this whole time. Move forward, Daniel. So here's the agenda of what we're going to be focusing on today. Who is Telguard? Just go over a little history there. The problem with POTS, second sunset, what happened earlier in the year with AT&T, as well as, what's coming up with T-Mobile and Verizon, longevity with cellular, and then we'll go over some product lineup that we have. Next. So who is Telguard? One more. So, Telguard, we, back up one there, Daniel. I think our presentation is on automatic roll forward, like in a certain amount of time. So the ecosystem is basically what we're looking at here. Telguard, we're providing alternative communication paths to systems that may originally have not been intended to use cell, right? So we're focusing on installations where our dealers are putting us in completely new installs. But I think where the strength of Telguard shines bright is when you take our product and put it with say an older system, retrofitting that system, where it wasn't originally intended to even have a cellular communication path or an IP path. That's where our strength lies. And we like to think of ourselves as being universally compatible because of the fact that we use a dialer capture aspect to our product. So this is just kind of a high level view of our ecosystem at Telguard. On the left side, we have all of our various products that incorporate the Telguard communication SIM, whether that's in residential, commercial, fire, or video. Once that data is transmitted over the cellular network, or in some cases with our product internet IP, it hits our Telguard communication center, what we refer to commonly as our TCC. So once it hits that, we traditionally pass the information back to monitoring stations over old school copper phone lines. But I would say in the past 4 to 5 years, we've tried to transition to a better, cleaner path for this data, more efficient path via IP connection. And I would say at this point, majority of the central stations that work with us, whether they're a Telguard reseller or not, have incorporated these IP profiles. So just as kind of a side note, if you have a contact ID, SIA, or even DMP-based alarm panel that's using a Telguard, reach out to your monitoring station and ask them if they can provide you an IP profile, for the Telguard solution. And 9 times out of 10, I would say they're going to be able to do that. Next. So, with the 35 plus years experience in the industry comes a lot of firsts and a lot of product evolutions. So we just wanted to highlight some of those on this particular slide. Telguard founded back in 1986 when I was a wee lad of 5 years. And, we've just kind of grown from there. In 1999, we introduced our first wireless analog device. And then in 2005, we released a 2G, so next generation version, second generation version of a wireless communicator. And then proudly in 2010, we released the first universal sole path commercial fire product in the industry. So it was something we were very, very proud of. That was with our TG7FS flagship commercial fire product that we still make and support to this day. 2012, we implemented 3G. 2016, of course, 4G LTE came into play. And last year, we began rolling out 5G LTE-M products. So we're hoping to complete our full portfolio of 5G LTE-M products by early next year. Daniel's going to get into a little more later about what exactly 5G LTE-M is. Next. So the problem with POTS. Next. Daniel, I believe this is you.
Yeah, and I can take over from here. So now that we have a pretty good understanding of what Telguard does and how we came into the picture, right? Part of the reason why Telguard came into the picture was essentially because of the way that POTS, the evolution of POTS, and not necessarily in a good way. Usually when we talk about evolution, right, we talk about adaptability, moving in a good direction, moving forward. And with POTS, it's almost the other way around, right? It's almost to the point where, hey, we had a system that works. It works great. It worked back in the 1880s. It worked great back in the 1900s, 1920s, 1930s. Let's just keep it going. Let's stay on this ride as long as we can. It didn't really quite evolve per se, right? So the system that we know as POTS, as plain old telephone system, is essentially the same twisted pair setup that we had back in the day. Not a lot has changed as far as the way that it works. Unfortunately, everything else has evolved. Everything else, the technology around it has evolved to the point that we're starting to see some detriments to the POTS technology. Now, the basis of POTS, it really comes down to not having a single connection between point A and point B. When you call somebody on the phone, there isn't a single wire that goes from your house phone to whoever you're calling to their house phone. It actually goes through many different nodes or switches, as we call them. If you have AT&T or Verizon or whoever as your long distance service provider, it doesn't mean that the entire call is going to be handled by that carrier, right? Every node and switch could be owned by different carriers across the United States, across the world. And part of the problem that we see with this level of routing is that even though you may have a specific carrier on your end, even though the receiving side, whoever you're calling, may have a specific carrier on their end, we're still relying on different nodes and switches as you make the call into whoever. Let's just say you're calling your mom from Miami to LA, right? All the way from Miami to LA, you're gonna hit 5, 6, 7 different carriers owning multiple switches across the path. And that's what brings out a different set of problems for us. As we try to tackle the evolution of POTS, we're thinking, okay, let's go ahead and make sure that POTS is good on the alarm side. Let's go ahead and make sure our central stations are good on their side with all the different carriers that they handle. They have diversity of carriers, they have all these things in place in order to handle any kind of issues. If something happens with one carrier, hey, let's go ahead and switch to the other one and connection stays afloat, right? So the only thing that we have control of is really the front end transitions. As integrators or dealers, as security dealers, when we go to a premise, when we go on location and we put in a quote for a system to be taken over, right? We ask, do you have a phone line? Can we get rid of it, right? Can we put a better solution, an internet-based solution, a cellular-based solution? Can we replace it with something that we can control that is actually more modern than what you consider a POTS connection? That's an easy enough conversation to have, and that's easily understandable, right? Your customers will say, okay, you're going to save me some money with cellular. Okay, you're going to give me something that uses the technology that I already have implemented. That makes sense. That's great. However, if that doesn't happen, if they are stuck in their ways and they still continue to use POTS, the problem may not be there today, may not be there tomorrow, but at some point, it may not even be caused by the carrier that they're using. It may not even be within their control. The problem may be a back-ended transition. The problem may lie with one of those switches that the call has to flow through in order to deliver that message to the central station. So think about it this way. From the property's location, they did everything right as far as maintaining the quote-unquote POTS connection. From a central station perspective, they're doing everything right, maintaining the multiple carrier connections. But somewhere down the path between the location that is being monitored and the monitoring station, there could be a switch that is handled by carrier X that you have no real association with, Something goes wrong with that switch gets replaced with a different type of equipment, gets replaced with a more digitized version of it. It starts adding different issues. And all of this really comes from the non-evolution of POTS as we see it today. A lot of these switches are no longer manufactured. A lot of these switches, switch manufacturers are barely manufacturing parts to keep them going, to maintain them. They're not really, I guess, offering these switches for new setups because no one's really setting up these type of POTS connections anymore, right? It's just about maintaining them. So not only are they scarce, they're hard to come by, they're probably, I can confidently say they're actually way more expensive than they were before. You know, the law of supply and demand kicks in, and it says that the less of something you have, the higher the price is going to be. Copper wire installations are old. They're old and they're prone to failure. So something is going to happen to the point where maintenance just really becomes expensive. So what's the alternative? If I'm a business owner and my business is taking care of that switch and providing that service for any carrier looking to make a call that happens to go through that switch, I'm going to try to cut down on costs. So I have a couple of different options. I'm either going to tell you like, hey, you know what, this switch is no longer going to be that analog switch that you were used to. That now it's going to be a digitized version of it. I'm going to have some analog to digital conversion, and that's what you're going to have to deal with. Now, when it comes to phone connections and the intended true nature of a POTS connection, it's really about making those voice calls, about having those conversations between point A and point B, where point A and B are people, right? Communicating and talking to each other. That is 99% of the intent of the POTS connections. Well, if you and I are having a conversation, right, and we happen to skip, a fraction of a second, our brains work in such a way, I'm not even going to feel it. I'm not even going to notice it. If I do notice something, I'm just going to understand exactly what you're saying through context, and it's not really going to make much of a difference. Well, these things do happen all the time. When you insert something new, like an analog to digital conversion in the middle that wasn't there before, you're increasing the possibility of some of these issues to happen. Now, when you take something that's different than just a phone conversation where you and I can kind of figure out what's going on and what the content of the conversation, because a half a second or fraction of a second, our minds kind of just make up for it. The brains behind a fire system, an intrusion system, the brains behind the receiver, right? They may not be as flexible or lenient, right? So what that really turns out to be is a half a second or a change in amplitude or a change in the frequency of a tone. It could change what a number 3 sounds on a DTMF tone to what a number 6 sounds. And all of a sudden what you're getting is a failed call. Now, what does that mean for us? It basically means that that system did not deliver that message on the first attempt as it's supposed to happen. And it goes into a second attempt, which at the end of the day turns into what? Delayed signals, right? So some of these issues are out of our control as users of the service, but what is within our control is the fact that we can choose a different way. So talk about the technical side of things as far as the evolution and how that's just it's just going to happen over time. It's just going to get worse. However, the government has kind of stepped in and said, okay, yeah, it's going to happen. We've been at it since 2011, I think, was the first time that I saw an FCC order that related to anything related to POTS and broadband and the replacement of. Well, what we have now is an FCC order that recently expired that basically said, hey, here's what we want you carriers to do. I want you carriers to go ahead and do what you can to maintain these lines, but you can't charge too much, right? I know it's expensive, and if you choose to maintain it, you need to be able to charge those carriers an appropriate amount of money. And we're talking about the switch owners. We're talking about the intermediate carriers, right? So not your AT&T or Verizon that may be at the forefront of who you pay the bill, but who AT&T and Verizon pays to use those switches that are used as the call goes through. Well, that FCC order essentially expired in August of 2022. So it was a 3-year order saying, do what you got to do, improve your system, but please maintain them at a reasonable price. So the price cap is now gone. So price is going to increase if it hasn't already. I'm sure you have already seen it from some of your customers where the price of the POTS line has gone up. And this could have two different types of side effects. So the intention is, of course, that if prices do go up, if those intermediary carriers start charging more, then the carriers that you use for your phone connection are going to start charging you more. They're going to start passing the cost down. So one would think, okay, this is going to naturally help because it's going to naturally make it more expensive to have that antiquated equipment, that antiquated phone connection, which in turn is going to have those dealers, those property managers reaching out to say, hey, what else do you have? What do you have that's less expensive than this very expensive phone connection? That would be the ideal scenario of this. That would be the ideal consequence that we would all be happy with, because over time, what it would change to, it would change to more recurrent revenue coming in for us. But really what it comes down to is a technology that we can safely rely on as opposed to POTS. The other side of that coin, and another possible side effect, is that rather than coming to us to say, hey, I want you to give me a better option for this phone connection because I just can't maintain it, it's too expensive, that they go out and seek their own solution, that they go out and, or not even go out, that they get a sales call from a cable company, from a digital advertiser stating like, hey, the costs are going up. I can save you plenty of money with a digital bundle. Your internet and your phone. It's gonna be the same. It's gonna feel the same. You're not gonna feel the difference. Well, the truth of the matter is that it's a digital conversion right on the premises, right? And it is going to make a difference when it comes to our systems. So what we need to be careful with is not only that, yes, we're gonna start getting an influx of customers calling out to us seeking that advice for better solutions, but we're probably also gonna see some of those customers that have been reliably working with phone lines for the past few years all of a sudden just get into problems because they're decided to go with a voice over IP solution that is not as efficient and is definitely not as accurate as a cellular or an internet device would be. Furthermore, US Code 214, it's just another piece of legislation. And I know it can get a little bit hectic to kind of go through all of these. Fortunately, we have very smart friends in the industry, right? It's one of those things that I'm not the smartest guy, but I know some pretty smart guys. I know Morgan Hertel from Rapid Response, for instance, did a very awesome review of what the code means to everybody. So taking some of that information and just putting it out there for everybody to see. Something else that came up is that we are now, the government is now making it easier for somebody to basically say, hey, if you're looking to change the technology, here's what you need to do. Give, a certain number of days of warning to the users, and then you can change your technology and you can go through all these changes. So it's basically making it easier for these intermediary carriers to say, hey, I don't want to deal with this analog stuff anymore. I want to go ahead and just go all digital. It's the way of the future. It's the way that I want to do. If I'm going to be doing business with anybody, it's going to be over digital. So it's just making it easier for these carriers, for the sub-level carriers, the last mile, if you will, to actually make those changes, as opposed to having to go through all this paperwork and all this waiting period before making those changes. It's just making it a lot easier to go through it. From a regulatory perspective, at least on the fire side, right? Anybody that deals with commercial fire, NFPA 72 is like a Bible that we have to abide by. Well, as we went through the public input earlier in the year, we're already having those conversations from public input as far as, that communication. We need to adjust the code to make sure that we embrace the fact that POTS is going away. What are we doing with those replacement technologies that are coming out of the woodwork, right? Whenever there's a new thing happening, the entrepreneur mindset of the American culture, as great as it is, right, is going to take over, and you're going to have companies coming in left and right, offering solutions. One of the things that we need to be careful with within the industry, right, is that all of these businesses that are coming up, all of these devices that are flooding the market, right, that they are actually regulated, that they are actually meeting and compliant with the right set of codes. So that's something that's being heavily talked about, in the committees as we speak. Had a meeting last week and earlier this morning as well. So it's something that's being heavily discussed as far as how can we accept, right, the fact that POTS is going away within the code, and how can we accept the fact that there are going to be technologies coming in that are looking to replace those POTS connections with their own solution. Those solutions are currently today not catering to our industry, to our needs, but they may be representing themselves in a way to imply, right, to customers, to our customers, that they are as seamless of a connection as a regular POTS line. So it's being looked at from several different angles. The truth of the matter is that POTS is going away, and we just need to be able to handle the consequences that come from the way that it is going away. To just kind of switch gears a little bit. So POTS has been going, the whole POTS evolution has been happening for many, many years. Same as the sunsets. You know, we've struggled and dealt with sunsets for many years. Like I mentioned, like it was mentioned before, I've been with Telguard for 15 years. So I've been through a couple of different sunsets. Actually, 2008, I started with Telguard in 2007, and the first sunset that I was a part of was 2008, which actually happened to be the first one, the analog sunset, right? I think it was February or March of 2008. And these things just happen, right? They just have to happen. And the reason why they have to happen is because unlike POTS, unlike anything else, right? Cellular technology continues to evolve, and it continues to evolve based on demand. If iPhones evolve, if Androids evolve, the technology that requires cellular technology evolves, then cellular technology needs to evolve to give them more, right? The second that you have a better quality screen or a better quality video footage, you want to be able to send it to a handheld device. In order to be able to stream it flawlessly, you need more bandwidth, you need more throughput, you need faster, better connections, right? The more that you are able to mobilize yourself as a human in any country, like hit rural areas, populate more rural areas, right? You're gonna need better coverage in those areas. You're gonna need towers that reach out further, or more towers along the way. So all of that is part of the evolution of cellular technology. And with that evolution comes a depreciation of older technology. So recently we experienced back in February, and I wanna say maybe February, June, the sunset of the 3G technology for AT&T, and we're getting ready for the next sunset for Verizon. So I wanted to talk a little bit about those, starting with AT&T and what actually happened, right? So it was originally scheduled for February 22nd of 2022. It was set on paper. This was set several years, I'm gonna say maybe 3 or 4 years before. So we kind of knew about it. We knew it was coming. We knew it was on the horizon. Even the best planners out there would have planned for it accordingly and could have had a schedule, how many units I'm gonna hit every month to get to my goal of replacing every single one of them. The one thing that nobody really counted on was COVID, the pandemic, and all the issues that came from it. So it wasn't just the fact that COVID hit and like, hey, oh no, I got sick and I can't go to work and I can't do, I can't schedule an installation or a change out, for the next couple of weeks. It was the lockdown situation. It was the fear that came from it, from letting strangers into my house, right? So there was a good period of time where that was a thing, very real thing in the United States. Couple that with the fact that there were consequences from people not going to work overseas with some of these components, and the chip shortages started happening, and there was an unavailability of certain products, whether it was our competitors, whether it was the panels, whether it was specific components that were needed for something very specific. We were all impacted in some kind of way. Well, the AICC committee looked to work with FCC, pushed AT&T to the brink of exhaustion, really. They did an excellent job trying to just push the issue, push the envelope, and trying to get a little bit of flexibility. Like, hey, this is unusual. I know from a business perspective, AT&T had its plans, and it's got I'm sure it has a long-term vision for 5, 10, 15-year evolution, and they needed this sunset to really make it happen. But again, nobody counted on COVID happening. Nobody counted on the after effects. So under the pressure of the AICC, AT&T did not buckle on that sunset date. It did not buckle. One of the things that we were able to see, actually, though, was that AT&T was actually lenient as far as how fast they were going to transition and remove those 3G connections. So instead of it happening February 22nd at the flip of a switch, it actually took a very long period of time. It wasn't actually finished, as far as we can tell, until about June of this year. So it took several months to get it done. And it was a market by market situation. So it was a very, very different. You had, you could have been in March of 2022, April of 2022, and still had, your 3G units working with no issues. And then the next month, they were gone, right? So it wasn't a very clear cut and dry switch that was flipped. That, and also we were able to work out a roaming agreement with AT&T. I know Telguard was one of the big manufacturers that was positively impacted by this arrangement. Not everybody was able to do it due to the type of radio and the type of a SIM card that was used. So there were some service providers, some of our peers that weren't able to take advantage of it, and some of us were. Telguard was fortunate enough of being able to do it because of the technology that we used. So starting in February, we were also able to reach an agreement where any 3G unit would be able to roam onto the T-Mobile network, which is great. But we don't take it as a way of keeping those 3G units alive. And I think that's one of the issues that we're kind of running into now as we near the end of the year. The fact that we've gotten a little bit complacent and comfortable with those units continuing to work. Well, the truth of the matter is that T-Mobile is also going to sunset their 3G, their 2G networks. If you remember back in the day, VoiceStream and T-Mobile, T-Mobile actually had a pretty strong presence on the 2G side. The 2G coverage is pretty strong. When we look at the way our units are behaving and they're reacting to the roaming side of things, we're actually seeing a better and stronger 2G presence than 3G. So even though 3G is still good and it's still kind of working, we are seeing a lot of our units actually working off of the 2G network. So what we like to think of this period of time from February till the end of this year and very likely beyond, T-Mobile's probably going to extend their sunset out into next year. We just think of it as a grace period, and that's how we should take it. We should take it as an opportunity to get out there and reach out to those customers and say, hey, we've been lucky. We've gotten very lucky. We had a pseudo extension on this sunset, and we now have time to go ahead and pencil you in for replacement. So let's not take it for granted, even though you may be working today with a 3G unit, 3G Telguard unit, it's very likely going to go away at some time in 2023. So we just need to be mindful of that. Now, from a Verizon perspective, how is that going to look? How is that CDMA sunset going to be different? All indications from our conversations with Verizon, from literature you can find online, all indications are that December 31st is going to be more or less the last day that you can have reliable coverage with Verizon. All indications are that starting January 1st or January 2nd, actually, it's basically going to be the flip of a switch. What they're actually thinking about doing, what they're actually, and again, this is all based on conversations we've had, what they're going to do is they're going to essentially kill access to the network on January 2nd. So there isn't going to be those units lingering around for a few more days or a few more weeks. Come January 2nd, when everybody, comes back home from a New Year's vacation, if they still have a CDMA unit on Verizon, it's going to go dark. It's going to be gone by January 2nd. So it's not going to hit every market. So unlike AT&T, what we're seeing is that Verizon is going to basically say, deny access to the network, to that 3G CDMA network on January 2nd, and then proceed to hit those different markets with the actual physical replacements and whatever else needs to happen. So pretty much unlike AT&T, where they try to do it market by market, in Verizon land, they're going to basically say no more access. Now we'll take our time and do the restructuring and the changes as we see fit. So how do you achieve longevity with cellular? And it's kind of a tough question, right? Because there is no single cellular radio that will last forever. It doesn't exist. if we could, right, that would be a great investment to have. But the nature of the evolution of the demand for cellular technology is going to continue to push forward this evolution towards more data, more things. Give me. I want more. Do you think 4K is good enough? I want 8K. You think 8K streaming is good? No. Now I want to be able to do 16K, whatever the next thing is. And guess what? I want to be able to do it while I'm on the road, while I'm waiting at an airport, without having to log into the Wi-Fi. I want to be able to have cameras in the middle of a forest. And I want those cameras to not have to be tethered to anything except just a cellular network. And I want it to be the highest quality possible. So consumers are really driving the need to evolve cellular technology. And this is really where LTE-M comes into the picture. So it's the technology that we've embraced as the future for Telguard because of what it means, right? So M stands for machine to machine. And what it really means is that this is a technology that was designed specifically to fit the needs of machine-to-machine devices that do not have a human interaction triggering something, right? So if I want to, let's just give you an example. If I want to make a phone call and I have a bad connection, what do? I move. I walk out the door to get a better signal, right? If I'm going to use my phone and I need to entertain myself, chances are I'm going to hit, social media, watch a couple of videos, go to Netflix, entertain myself, and I'm going to look for the highest quality. Once it starts lagging, I'm going to start complaining like, oh my gosh, this is such a horrible network, right? These are the types of demands that a human interaction and the types of things that human interaction allows you to have for these cellular devices. These are not the same type of requirements or interactions that you get with a fire communicator, that you get with a interactive communicator for your home, right? So LTE-M is essentially just a technology that takes into consideration the special needs that automated devices have, which devices in our industry fall under, and looks at them and takes care of them and proposes a solution for them, right? So what do we need? We need low power consumption, right? Take something like a traffic light or a parking meter, right? Which is another type of device that would use a cellular connection. What does it need to do? It needs to send small bits of information every once in a while. It's not going to be streaming anything, right? It needs to have a very low power consumption so that it doesn't consume too much power, too much energy. It needs to have good coverage, good signal, because you're not going to have all these massive high gain antennas popping out of them, right? It needs to be reliable. It needs to be consistent. And in certain situations, right, it really needs to have good in-building penetration. So all of these considerations are coming in, and LTE-M technology is basically saying, hey, we're going to offer this level of technology that is going to satisfy these needs, but it's not going to go the extra mile, right? So we're not going to give you, just because we can, we're not going to give you, 2 gig or whatever speed network. We're going to give you a few megs. We're going to give you a few K. We're going to give you exactly what you would need for your particular purpose. You know what? I know that you're not going to be mobile. As a machine-to-machine technology, chances are you're not going to be too mobile. Chances are you're going to be installed in a location where you can't really do too much about the infrastructure, right? You can't walk out when you really need to, or when a tower has some kind of issues and the signal strength drops a little bit, you can't just move around by yourself, right? So we're going to use frequencies that allow you to have the best in-building penetration you could possibly have. We're going to stick with the lower frequencies. And that's basically what LTE-M does. Now, is it 5G? Is it not 5G? And this is where there's actually a lot of debate when it comes down to it. At the end of the day, right, you have manufacturers, carriers that count Cat-M, M1, LTE-M. It's part of the 5G framework. And when I say 5G, the G stands for generation. It's a 5th generation network. The technology behind the 5G that is being used on the consumer side, 5G NR or whatever you call it. Yes, it does have the 5G moniker, right? It has that name in it. But 5G as a technology, as a generation, right, basically just says you have to meet certain requirements. And if you meet these requirements, then you are considered part of that framework. LTE meets those requirements. LTE is part of that framework. However, here's where it gets a little tricky. When we label it as 5G, we don't mean that it's actually using what you would consider the 5G network provided by Verizon, by AT&T. And if you have a 5G phone, which most of us probably have, there have been plenty of times, right, where you look at your phone, you start doing a download or something, or start browsing the internet, and you see a little 5G logo come up. And then you go to a different location, you go show something to somebody else, and all of a sudden the little 5G logo turns into an LTE logo, right? And that's because the 5G connectivity wasn't strong enough, so it falls back to the backbone of today's carriers, which is LTE. So with that in mind, what's happening is 5G the 5G technology, 5G NR technology that's being used today by the carriers, for the most part, does not have the reach or the coverage that LTE offers. It just doesn't have it. So what it does is it relies on LTE to provide that initial connection and to provide that extended coverage throughout the United States. LTE-M, or CAT-M as we know it today, uses that LTE footprint for coverage. When it comes to longevity and what it means for us is that CAT-M, as one of the requirements that it had, is that it needs to be able to last through the next sunset, right? So one of the requirements to be able to be an LTE-M is a device in the network. If as a business that provides a service like AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever else, and if as a manufacturer, you are manufacturing an LTE-M, a CAT-M1 device, right? There needs to be something in the protocol that allows that device to transition as the 5G technology takes over, whatever other advancements happen on 5G, and LTE may eventually start sunsetting, right? Which I don't think is going to happen for the next 10 years, if that. That LTE-M has a built-in protocol that says we should be able to transition seamlessly through that next sunset. And that's the beauty that LTE-M really brings to the table. And that is the meaningful part for us to actually get in the business with the LTE-M technology. The fact that, hey, it's not necessarily running the fastest thing. It's not necessarily giving you the best bandwidth, and it never meant to, because we don't need it. We really don't need it for what we do, for the type of messages that we send out, for the type of information that we transact with. We don't need it. What we do need is to avoid as many sunsets as possible. And it's a lot better feeling, right, when you sell a device to a customer saying, yeah, 10, 15 years, we'll see, 15, 20, maybe. It's going to be a long period of time, as opposed to saying, yeah, and on average, it's going to be 5, 6 years. So it's mostly about not having to make changes. And that's what CAT-M means, because it caters to our type of products, as opposed to what we've been sort of riding. We've just been riding the wagon of consumer electronics, right? And unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, consumer electronics move at a much faster pace than our industries. So how can Telguard help, Brian?
Oh, Daniel, I'll be happy to give you a break and go into it. So, what I like to think of Telguard as is the Swiss Army knife of the industry. We just have something for everybody. We have different products that fit a lot of different scenarios, whether it's UO-based, HJ-based, insurance budget-based. Next, please. Next slide. Thank you. So let's take a look into our different verticals, starting with the residential solution. So the big difference here between the TG1X and the TG4 is going to be power specifics. So the TG1 Express or 1X is powered straight from the panel. It really allows for a much quicker installation when we can just get that power straight from the panel. What I'll kind of preface all of our products with is they all understand the same formats, whether that's contact ID or Bosch 2E, 3A squared, or modem 4, all the way down to Pulse 3.1 or 4.2, with a couple different variations on each one of those. So all of the products understand the formats. What's really going to vary the products is the UL listings, the enclosures, these sort of things. So yeah, the TG1 Express is basically our flagship residential solution. It's pretty much a standard for any type of residential installation, whether it's a new installation, new panel installation, or a retrofit. Now, if that panel isn't going to allow for a cellular product like ours to be powered directly from it, we have the next step up, which is the TG4. So this unit is sold with a battery, backup battery inside of the enclosure, hence the bigger model behind our TG1 Express. But then it's also powered via AC transformer that we include with the product. Now, with both of these solutions, we do offer an additional service, that sometimes can be used as another upgrade hook for the end user to upgrade for, say, sunsets or even moving from phone line to cell. And that service is Home Control Flex. So this is our arm disarm, remote arm disarm service that the end user can get push notifications from, add additional users to control the system, or just get notifications when different events happen, whether those are arms, disarms, or alarm events. Next, please. So moving up to the commercial applications, as we see on these, again, back to my point of enclosure type, we start with the TG4 is in the resin enclosure. So even though I mentioned in the residential space, it actually has a UL listing for light commercial to back up a phone line. So the next step up from that, if your customer wants a product attached to their alarm system that would provide a little more confidence just looking at it, right, we step up to the metal enclosure, the locking metal enclosure of our TG7 and TG7E products. And then, of course, the big guy in the back there, the TG7A, that has a grade A attack chassis. That's more for financial bank sort of applications. It's all, again, going to be, based on what the need of the customer is, what's the need of their insurance provider. So all of these solutions also can implement what we call standard line security or 200-second line supervision. We know this is generally a requirement from the insurance provider when it comes to backing up intrusion systems for pawn shops, jewelry stores, pharmacies. And again, if the customer, I know the kind of one of the points of this presentation is talking about the inevitable POTS sunset. If the customer is still looking to implement POTS, and I would say if that's the case, and Daniel can jump in here or not, but maybe we want to put POTS, based on what Daniel's told us so far, we want to put the POTS side of this setup as a backup, and the cellular is a primary. So we know the cellular is always leading the system. This is something that can be accomplished through our registration process, our product registration process on Telguard.com or Telguard tools. So beyond that, we have implemented some IP-based products into the mix. So when it comes to our commercial applications, we do have the TG7E. So the customer has no phone lines, getting rid of the phone lines. And you, the installer, the customer, both have confidence not only in cellular, but also Ethernet, their local area network provider. So we can do basically the same thing as what phone lines, applied to our product in the past. We can put it in the mix and either make it primary or backup to the cellular pathway to deliver the alarm signals from. So, again, you kind of mix and match and pick and choose, get the best tool for the job that's going to satisfy the customer's need. Next slide. And then lastly, fire, commercial fire, obviously has been just a huge market in the last few years, with what Daniel has said about POTS and, of course, end user experience, cost of phone lines, all these things have just made commercial fire just such a hot vertical for us. So what we wanted to do here is essentially tell a story, with our products in the commercial fire line. We know a majority of our setups and installations are going to involve single path or sole path applications. And, we know a majority of our dealers want to have a single, power connection to the panel. They don't want to have to generally hire out an electrician or create a new outlet near the fire panel if they don't have to, right? It adds cost, it adds time to the job. So with all that being said, our engineers designed the TG7FP because they stripped away all the unnecessary stuff and said, this is a unit that essentially focuses in on a majority of use case applications that our dealers want. Single path, powered from the panel, 12 or 24 volts. So it hits all the right marks there. And because we've trimmed the fat, so to speak, it makes it a very cost-efficient product to choose from. And of course, as I mentioned at the top of the slide, our TG7FS flagship, it's basically the standard in commercial fire. HCAs know us by name. They recognize the box. They love the solution. They love how easy we are to work with, and so on and so forth. But this unit, if you can't get power from the panel, if your customer wants, not a red resin enclosure, they want a sturdy, strong, locking metal enclosure, this would be the step up, TG7FS. And actually our current generation, the LTE-M generation of fire products across the board have, on the metal can side anyways, have the ability to not only use the standard 120 volt transformer that we include with the product, but this current board design on those metal cans also allow for power from panel, straight from the board, 12 or 24 volts. So, we're putting that option to the dealers, pick the right installation type for your customer. So yeah, the TG7FS in its current form has that capability. And yes, you can still use a phone line with it or make it single path, putting the cell in front of the phone line or the phone line in front of the cell. It's a very versatile product. That's why we've kept it around so long. Beyond that, we, as I mentioned in the commercial slide previously, we've implemented some network options. So the TG7FE essentially has that network side to the unit. So now you can include that in a dual path commercial fire setup for your customer if, again, you're comfortable with utilizing their local area network, their IP connection into the cellular device on the panel. Now, specific to the sunset upgrades that we've kind of been harping on, this presentation, the TG7UB board. So this is our latest gen upgrade board, LTE-M, right? So we're making everything 5G ready, getting everybody essentially ahead of the next sunset with this particular upgrade board. If all you're doing is just upgrading an existing Telguard 7 series product, which applies not only to the commercial fire TG7FS units, but also just a standard commercial unit, you can use the TG7UB board. And then lastly, the TG-PIM, it's an accessory we released a couple years back. It had a specific purpose to give our older units the ability to power directly from the fire panel. But in its current form, with our units having that ability to power from panel baked into the board already, if you have a commercial fire setup that, say, doesn't have a DAC, right, you can now implement this TG-PIM on our TG7FS or TG7FE products. And that will not only allow it, to have that existing power from panel, but then we can utilize these additional inputs that are available on the TG-PIM. So we can take, let's just call it an ancient panel with no dialer, no DAC, and incorporate this board to, modernize it. Let's bring it into the 21st century. Next slide. As we kind of wind it down here, I did want to highlight that we have implemented a promo with our distributor partners. So, definitely reach out, get specifics from them. But for all intents and purposes, it's a buy 4, get 1 free on our TG1 Express units. So just contact your supply house to get the particulars there. And then I did want to add that we have some other distributor promos going on from now until January. So, if you're looking to, say, get some upgrade boards, TG7UBs, whether AT&T or Verizon, reach out to your distributor and ask about that promo as well. Now, I did want to go back and highlight one thing here on this promo. It is Verizon only on the TG1 Express unit. Since we're, of course, in a CDMA sunset period, we wanted to focus this promo specifically on Verizon upgrades. Next slide. Okay, great. So I know we have some questions, Daniel. I'll go ahead and kind of jump on those. I might want to have you add some color to this first one. So how long will we be supporting Bosch modem formats, and will there ever be an IP communication solution other than you transmitting signals via POTS or VoIP format? So, I mean, supporting Bosch formats, I would say that's indefinite, right? We will continue to support what we already understand, into the future, no?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's an excellent question. So we will continue. Let me phrase it this way. We're going to continue to support it as long as we continue to support DACT connectivity, right? At some point in the future, Telguard's going to be around for a good while. At some point in the future, we're gonna see that DACT connectivity is no longer going to be a thing. We're going to move into a more prevalent scenario with serial connection, or RS-232 or Ethernet or something along those lines. So at that point, we're going to be looking into different protocols, and eventually it may, the hope is that eventually all of the systems out there get changed to the newer technology, right? But as long as that technology is still used, the DAC, the actual dialer, we'll continue to support it. And as far as the question regarding IP or different communication pathways, right? So currently we do IP for contact ID, SIA, DMP. We do also have the POTS, of course, but we also have XML posting that we use with a couple of different automation software companies, Mastermind and Stages, for example. So the opportunity is there for us to see a different way of delivering messages. So we're definitely looking into all of that as well.
Okay. Let's see. So I'll go ahead and we answer that live. Will Telguard be able to provide a list of customers we should reach out to? Yes, we have a couple different ways for our dealers to do that via telguard.com. Just log into the portal under your subscribers tab. You'll see a report that the development team put together. It's called 3G/CDMA subscriber listing. So just go to that tab, download it. You'll see all the customers still listed as active in the system that need to be upgraded. You can also just pull a full subscriber listing from the portal, and it'll identify network type, whether it's LTE, which is, of course, the ones you don't want to really worry about right now, or 3G or CDMA. So just, everything's done from the portal. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to our customer service team at 1-800-229-2326, option 1. Great staff support that we have there. Clarence, let's see. If you have Verizon 3G communicators, will they still work on T-Mobile 3G system if there's T-Mobile signal in the given area? Daniel, do you want to tackle this one? I kind of think I know the answer, but I'd rather hear it from you.
All right, so the short answer is no, it's not going to work. The longer answer that everybody wants to hear is that unfortunately these are incompatible technologies, right? So what we know today, for instance, is we know that Verizon has LTE, we know that T-Mobile has LTE, we know that AT&T has LTE, and LTE is sort of like the 4G technology for everybody, right? That wasn't really the case for 3G. For 3G, you had certain players like T-Mobile and AT&T that used UMTS or HSPA technology, and you had certain players like Sprint and Verizon, and I think there might have been another one, Metro PCS, right? That were actually using CDMA technology. So just to give you a quick example, CDMA's technology, that technology itself does not rely on SIM cards, whereas GSM and the evolved HSPA UMTS technology does. And that's the reason why we were able to have that roaming agreement in play with T-Mobile, because they use compatible technologies.
And then lastly, at least the questions I have on the screen, can we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Daniel, I think let's give them a gift, right?
Yeah, I'll take our pictures out of it and send it out. Want to hear anybody?
Right, so the ESA team is going to give us a list of the attendees. We'll have contact information, and I'll make a note to send that out to those that ask.
Awesome. Yes. So we will be sending out this presentation to Telguard, and we will also be uploading it on ESA's YouTube channel for those of you that want to watch it. And as well, it will be on our integrator newsletter. So you'll be able to watch it there if you are subscribed to it. We do have a couple other questions to go over. The first one is AT&T sunset kind of got dragged out and went region to region for a few months. Will Verizon do the same thing?
So based on what we're hearing from our contacts, it doesn't sound like it. They're going to be a little bit more on the nose about, keeping everything tight and sticking to the dates as they've announced them, so that, they can transition to have a network that fully supports, the technologies that they're moving forward with. So, the takeaway there is, don't plan on them pushing anything out. You need to go ahead and get those customers upgraded so they don't see a loss of communication for their alarm signals.
Awesome. The next question we have is, are all manufacturers' CDMA communicators going to stop transmitting alarm signals, or just Telguard's?
So it's technology specific, right? I think is what Daniel's kind of been saying this whole presentation, right? So any communicator, any product, regardless of manufacturer, that uses CDMA technology will be affected by this. The Verizon is essentially taking away that side of their tower, taking away that technology. So any product, whether it's in our industry or outside of the industry, will be affected by this. And that's why they tried to give everyone a heads up, as early as they possibly could. I feel like we've had that message going for, years now, right? 3-4, years. Just as soon as we learned it, we got it out to the customer base. So yeah, plan on any product, Telguard or other competitor will be affected by this.
Awesome. And then is there somewhere on telguard.com where I can look up my Telguard units to see if they are CDMA?
Yeah, so just go to telguard.com, and once you log into the portal, you will go under subscriber tab, and under that tab, you'll see 3G/CDMA subscriber listing, and just click on that. It's a neat little report that peels off all the unaffected active units you have with us, and only shows you the units that are still active, meaning we're billing you for them, that's using technology that will be affected by the sunset. So yeah, subscriber tab, and then the report listing for 3G CDMA, and you'll be good to go.
Okay, great. Do distributors have a good supply of Telguard units in stock now?
Absolutely. I can confidently say, we got ahead of all the backorder situations that we were dealing with earlier in the year. I know this was kind of an industry-wide thing, and some are out of it, some are not, but I can say that we are completely caught up on our back orders. We have a great amount of stock that's built right here in the US of A, coming from Corinth, Mississippi. So if your distributor doesn't have our product in stock, ask them why, because Brian Dotson from Telguard promised me he has these things in stock at his warehouse. So tell him to get us a PO ASAP.
Okay. Where are Telguards made, in the US or somewhere overseas?
Yep, they're made right here in the US. And again, everything is built and shipped from Corinth, Mississippi.
Okay. And the last question we have is, does Telguard have any promotions I can take advantage of to upgrade my CDMA units?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have, toward the end of the presentation there, I mentioned our promo on the TG1 Express Verizon model. It's buy 4, get 1 free promo. So reach out to your local distributor and see how they're applying that discount to the products. And beyond that, we do have some other promos going on with other products. Specifically to this presentation, I would say ask about the TG7UB upgrade boards. There's a promo on that's happening from now until January. So definitely reach out and inquire further about those 2 upgrade promos we're running currently.
Okay, and I do see we have a couple of new Q&A questions as well. The first one we have is, how long do you expect 4G LTE signal to last?
Daniel, do you want to give your best guess currently?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of tough to put a number to it. I would say 10 plus years, really. And it goes back to the fact that right now, as we see AT&T and Verizon, there's no way that they could just turn off LTE and have the needed coverage, right? A lot of the bigger companies like AT&T and Verizon have basically acquired frequencies in the higher spectrum to be able to handle the 5G bandwidth. And what that really means is that you basically you have less reach per tower. So you need more towers to be able to have all the coverage. So it's not something where they could just turn every LTE tower into 5G as it stands today and then have the same amount of coverage. They're going to need to really have a really heavy investment if that's the way they want to do it, or just continue to have LTE as your baseline for coverage until something else comes along. Okay,
awesome. And then the last question that we have is Telguard going to make dual SIM communicators that can communicate on AT&T and Verizon at the same time?
I can say that we have stuff on the roadmap that might apply to this, might not. But the team's always listening to the needs of the industry, the needs of the market, the needs of the dealers, and different use case scenarios. So anything else you want to add there, Daniel?
I was going to say stay tuned, because that's definitely something that's come up time and again. And being who we are as Telguard, right? We want to make sure we do it the right way. And so it's on the agenda for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Great webinar today. Very informative. Awesome Q&A questions. Like I said, we will be emailing this webinar out, uploading it to our ESA YouTube channel. You can also find a live recording of this on ESA's Facebook page. And have a great rest of your week.
Awesome. Thanks again, Daniela, and the rest of the audience. Take care, everybody.
Awesome. Have a good one. Bye.